Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by gifts from Dave and Jamie Cummings, the Hartwig family, Barbara and Peter Gattermeyer, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon. The Ruckettes join me shortly. And our topics this week: some say no tanks to a military parade in Kansas City. Republicans in Kansas say yes and yes to Kobach and Collier. And two strong points of view dominate the battle over gun control, plus roast and toast. But we start with our Newsmaker segment and take a look at some of what's happening at City Hall. And joining me is Kansas City, Missouri Councilmember Catherine Shields, who represents the 4th District. She was elected at large, that is citywide, in 2015. Ms. Shields previously served on the City Council from 1987 to 94. She then ran successfully for Jackson County Executive, where she served from 1995 to 2006. It is a pleasure to welcome Councilwoman Catherine Shields back to Ruckus. Catherine, thank you very much for coming in. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
You voted for the Memorandum of Understanding with Edgemoor to move forward
Yes.
on building a new airport. Was that a vote of confidence in Edgemoor or a vote simply to keep the process moving forward?
Well, I actually think it was both. I feel very strongly, having looked at all four bidders that we had come forward in this process, any one of them could have built us an excellent airport. But Edgemoor was the one chosen by the selection committee, then reaffirmed by the council. It's the entity that was going out and meeting with the voters before the election. And frankly, it seemed like a no-brainer to me that we would approve the Memorandum of Understanding and move forward with this process.
So do you think things will progress smoothly from this point on?
I certainly hope so. I mean, anytime you're building a large project, there's going to be hiccups, there's going to be issues. But I believe that the majority support from the council will continue.
Well, Kansas City now has two of its longtime goals underway, a new airport and the downtown convention hotel. What should the council be looking at now? What are the next big projects that need to be considered?
Well, I think, first of all, just a little bit with the convention hotel. It is moving forward. In fact, the groundbreaking is next week. But I think it's very important that the council keep focused on our Visit KC, our Convention and Visitors Bureau, to make sure we keep them well funded.
You need a new director there, don't you?
We do need a new director, but we also need to keep the funding strong, because for this hotel to be successful, we need to have many, many more conventions coming to Kansas City. And it's really the Convention and Visitors Bureau, Visit KC, that is tasked with that job. So we need to make sure they're getting the resources they need so that they can make this new downtown convention hotel a success.
How critical are streetcars to the city's future?
Well, I will tell you, I have been amazed. I was somewhat of a skeptic with the first route, the short one from Union Station to the River Market. But it has been amazing, people's response to it. Not only have we had something like double the ridership that we thought was estimated, but in addition to that, we really have seen an influx of investment along that route, that the investors say that a great deal of why they came was that streetcar. And I think we've had a successful vote to extend it on out to UMKC. And I think if we're able to get the federal funds and dollars to move forward and get this done, I think it will be a real boon to the whole Main Street corridor along there. I think it's going to be very helpful to UMKC, the Art Institute, and the Nelson, all the major institutions along that route.
Let me ask you about your former job as Jackson County Executive. You must be concerned about the stories coming out of Jackson County government, the legislature and the executive fighting over who controls what, and then the apparently unending situation with the jail. What can be done to straighten things out to some extent?
Well, let's talk about the jail first.
We're down to a minute, so you need to move kind of quickly.
Basically, they've gotten 2 new people in heading up the jail. as the director and assistant director. And I toured it about a week ago, and I saw amazing improvements from what I thought I would see based on the news stories. So I think they're really getting a hand on operating the jail. In the broader picture, you know, it's an interesting thing. County government normally is a strong executive form of government, and that basically once the legislature adopts the budget, then the executive's kind of in charge. But that seems to have changed dramatically, and I'm thinking it may not have changed just since Frank was here. I think that his predecessor may have actually ceded a lot more control and input to the legislature than was normally in place.
Wrap it up very quickly. Running for re-election next year?
That's my plan at this time.
Not going to run for mayor?
I certainly haven't made that commitment.
There's certainly a lot of people who are, right?
There certainly
Catherine,
are.
thank you very much. Great to see you again. Appreciate your time.
Good to see you.
That is Kansas City, Missouri Councilwoman Catherine Shields. Now let's meet the panel and start a ruckus. Lisa Johnston is a consultant and columnist. Steve Rose is a Johnson County civic leader and columnist at the Kansas City Star. Jason Grill is the founder of J. Grill Media and a senior advisor at Paris Communications. And Ron Freeman is a motivational writer and speaker. Thanks to all of you for coming in. This is truly an all-star panel. So prove that I'm right. Do good, good work, though.
Well done.
If you're not Sam Brownback, being governor of Kansas might make you more popular. In office since only late January, Governor Jeff Collier is now slightly ahead of Secretary of State Chris Kobach in the race to win the GOP gubernatorial nomination in August. In a poll from the Remington Research Group, Collier gets 23% support, Kobach 21%, and that, of course, is clearly within the margin of error. Half of the Republicans surveyed said they have no opinion of the new governor. Kobach receives 42% approval from those surveyed. All of the other GOP candidates receive only single-digit support. Now, I know it's probably way too soon to draw conclusions about the race, but Steve, as a seasoned observer, does this early poll offer some insights?
No.
Thank you, Steve. Let's move on.
It's way too early. It is way too early. And the second-tier candidates, nobody knows anything about them, so they're getting, 2%, 3%. Some of them are going to build up, and those are going to come out of somebody's hide, probably Collier. I tend to think that Kobach's support is very solid behind him, loyal. It's going to stay there. Those numbers are not going to deviate very much. I think that Collier's numbers are squishy because, as the poll shows, half the people know nothing about him. And those that know about him probably don't know. There's not much to know what he would do or what he has done. And so it's just, it's very fluid, and it's just too early, other than to say that I think Kobach has a very strong position in the fact that he's got that loyal following.
And he's named someone to serve as his running mate?
He's talking about a fellow by the name of Wink Hartman, who was running for governor and just backed out. He's now available along with his millions of dollars, and so he may join the Kobach team.
Lisa, let me ask you, you've watched Kansas politics for a long time as well. Does this poll offer any insights to you?
I'll agree with Steve and say no, especially in light of the fact that 37% of the respondents are undecided at this point. That's a huge float of voters that have to go one way or the other. My opinion is that Collier is at a major disadvantage because of the upcoming legislative session and what's going to be required for the budget. Schools, the court has said, need more funding, and they didn't do a good enough job last time when they increased taxes. It was a short-term solution, but longer term, there needs to be more revenue. And so they've pretty much stuck their hand in every cookie jar that's available, and there just aren't enough places to go to get extra money or cuts. And so there's probably going to have to be another tax increase. Kobach is sitting back and just waiting for Collier to do what he has to do constitutionally to work with the legislature to balance the budget. Then he's going to pounce, and he's going going to say, look at him, he's a tax and spend liberal.
Is that right? Is that what's going to happen? Collier will finally cave in and say, yes, we have to raise taxes to support the schools, and Kobach will take issue with that?
I don't know. And here's what I think right now, the poll to me says a lot because of the name ID. Kobach should have an advantage there, but he didn't.
Yeah, is it not good for a candidate to have a survey that says most people have no opinion of you?
Well, it doesn't hurt. That means they don't know anything about him. So there really is an open opportunity for him. Could be very positive. No, I think it will be because Jeff Collier's a pretty sharp guy. And I think he's going to do, if he does the right thing for Kansas, how can he not like him?
Well, what kinds of things, Jason, do you think Collier should be doing to improve name recognition and cause people to have some idea about what he stands for and what he wants done?
He started off on a strong foot talking about the code word that you've mentioned on the show many times, transparency, and trying to do some things in Kansas. He's obviously traveling around the state more. He's making himself more well-known. I think in a general election, obviously, I think a guy like him might have more of a better shot than Kobach just because of the extreme viewpoints of Kobach.
The one thing he has done is CanCare. And he privatized Medicaid and saved the taxpayers. This is Collier I'm talking about.
You say
over $1 billion.
You say he's really more conservative than Kobach because of this.
I'm not sure whether Kobach really is a conservative. I'm not even sure he has an ideology. I think the man is just sort of kind of a mean and vicious guy. And I think that has nothing to do with conservative or liberal.
Let me ask you one more quick question. HCA, Hospital Corporation of America, moving from Missouri to Kansas. Governor Collier is a member of the staff at HCA.
He's on the board, right?
He's on the board. He says he had nothing to do with the move, which was a $3 million move. Is that going to come back and cause problems for him, whether he was actually involved or not?
No, I don't think it will, because these things are moving back and forth across state line. I think the average person is kind of blurred over and hasn't really paid much attention to it. I think it'll just slide through.
All right, we will move on. When President Trump suggested there should be a 4th of July parade in Washington with military personnel and equipment on display, critics said no, it would look like events staged by dictators in Russia and North Korea. Actually, Trump's idea came from his visit to France last year, where he watched the Bastille Day parade, a celebration of events leading to the creation of a republic and the end of a monarchy. Missouri Attorney General Josh Hawley, who is not a Trump critic, has endorsed the parade idea and called on the president to stage it in Missouri, maybe in Kansas City. No doubt Hawley sees this as something that would enhance his campaign to unseat Senator Claire McCaskill. So is this a crazy idea? Is a 4th of July parade in Washington or in Kansas City beyond the pale some kind of crazy, ridiculous idea, Ron?
I don't think it's crazy. I think it may be a political negative for Republicans if it's done, simply because it looks, to me, it's a tin-horn dictator. So if we look at my tanks, look at my guns, it's like, well, timing-wise, and you have a president who, frankly, he's got a lot of hatred in this population politically, and it's not necessarily he's a bad. I think that he has an opportunity. He needs to do things that are going to move us forward. I think you see this situation, the left will be out in droves condemning whatever he does. And it just makes it more volatile and more tense in our society. I think it's a bad idea for right now.
Jason, let me ask you the same question. Would a parade on the 4th of July, or some say maybe Veterans Day, in Washington or in Kansas City be an unthinkable concept?
Well, they talked about it being privately funded. I think that's kind of the key. I don't think that the people would be very happy if it was funded only by the government. I also think Kansas City is a non-starter. I don't think that'll ever happen. I think that was just a attention grabber there by the Attorney General. I could never see Donald Trump holding a parade of this magnitude in his ice in the middle of Missouri or Kansas City. So I think it'll be in D.C. or New York if it happens. But the private funding model is kind of interesting because I know in the past we have had parades like this, usually after war, but victories. But it just seems odd. It seems odd to spend money on it right now.
Don't you think when you're the most powerful nation on earth that you really don't need to bring out all the toys to prove it? Yeah. I think that's the whole point. I think everybody knows that the United States of America could flatten the rest of the world if we got up one morning and had a bad mood and decided to do it. Yeah. It doesn't need to be.
It's clear we don't need to flex our muscles, but this is not about the parade. This is about publicity. He is doing this because he is running for U.S. Senate, and he's probably done the math, and he knows that President Trump got just shy of 1.6 million votes in Missouri, and turnout's lower, non-presidential year. So he only has to curry favor with about 2/3, a little bit less than 2/3 of the Trump voters. And if he can do that, then he's going to be elected to the U.S. Senate. So I really think that this is about publicity and running for the U.S. Senate.
Let me go back to Steve here for a second. I thought the idea of the parade was to pay tribute to the military.
Well, that's what it's. That's
well, that's the proposal. That's the idea. Is that
I don't think that, but I don't think that's the motivator. I think to Trump, this is a huge show. It's right out of television. It will gather all kinds of enthusiasm from people who are pro-military, and get the juices going. It's a ploy. I personally think it's a ploy to just get people to rally around Donald Trump.
All right, and Josh Hawley.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the main idea being Trump.
Assuming it is simply a ploy by Hawley to get attention for his campaign, would it generate attention, and would the attention be positive?
It depends on who you ask, but if Trump's
well,
about
50%,
if he's about 50%, right, and his approval a little bit higher than that in Missouri, obviously would help get his base out. But I still don't think, personally, I think that Senator McCaskill will get reelected. But Hawley's got to do what he can to get in the news.
Well, why would you say that McCaskill will be elected, other than you're a Democrat?
Just because of her experience, her tenacity, her work ethic, her going to rural areas that are typically red.
How about her no vote on the tax cut? The tax cuts seem to be popular. The polls are changing.
She's going to have to explain that to moderate Democrats.
I think she's going to have a really difficult time. Missouri is a difficult state to run in, and were it not for the terrible gaffe the last time she ran, she probably wouldn't have been elected. So I think, I'm not saying that it's a foregone conclusion that she can't win, but I think he has an excellent shot at defeating her.
Ron, is there still strong support for President Trump in the heartland in Missouri and, for that matter, in Kansas?
I don't think he's lost any support in Missouri. I think if it's election day, he would still win.
You got independents, though, right?
Independents, Missouri?
But right.
Oh, independent vote.
But it's a different election cycle. It's an off-year election.
Yeah.
And I think you run a risk of energizing the left by coming here with this whole concept of a military parade.
I don't think it's going to happen as much fun as I think it would be. As surely as night follows day, mass shootings are followed by calls for gun control. The tragic deaths of 17 people in a South Florida high school have revived demand for more legislation restricting gun sales and checking the mental health of prospective gun owners. Sweeping change is difficult because of limitations imposed by the U.S. Constitution. Still, there could be ways to solve the gun problem. Only difficulty is no one has yet found them. Some suggest President Trump, because of his staunch support of the Second Amendment, might be the only one who could forge some sort of compromise in Congress to limit access to guns, a sort of Nixon to China move. Do you expect something of that sort to happen, Lisa?
In a word, no. I think all we can really expect is probably an emphasis on doing a better job with current law and procedure and making sure we're doing background checks, getting the information in, making sure the FBI isn't dropping the ball when they get tips, and all of those things are already being talked about. Now, a lot of folks wonder why it is the case when you look at opinion polls that more doesn't happen legislatively, because the majority of people are for a little bit tighter gun restriction or some new legislation. But the reason that it doesn't happen is when you combine the folks who legitimately just don't believe in it with those who cower like scared rabbits at the thought of the NRA and their spending power in elections, plus those who are willing to prostitute themselves essentially for big donors, then the votes just aren't there for this, and it's unfortunate.
And what do you think of the idea of arming teachers? I mean, I think that is one of the craziest ideas I've ever heard. First of all,
that's what they do in Israel.
Well, but what's going on in this country is mass shootings, not just in the schools. We have them in Las Vegas at concerts. We have them at movie theaters. God knows where it could be next. It could be at a swimming pool where nobody could have any concealed anything. And I just think it's ludicrous to pick out one little area and say this is going to get solved by concealed weapons.
I don't think teachers are the right people to be first responders in most cases, unless they have a particular disposition. But it's a difficult issue, and it's terrible every time it happens. But it's not as simple as one law. We have 300 million guns in America. We could stop selling guns tomorrow, and we're still going to have gun violence. It's really difficult.
You got to do a lot more than just get rid of guns, obviously. We've heard all this, the mental health, the security, the restrictions on background checks, the time, the age. I mean, this is all kinds of different things that go into these things. It's not just one issue. And the problem is politicians like to focus on one issue, and they really need to offer solutions and come together. And Trump, at least, is, I think he wants to do something, but he's, you know, we'll see what happens.
Did any of you see the event he convened yesterday? That would be Wednesday in the White House with people and students, and it was a remarkable session.
It was good.
You got the sense, at least I got the sense, and I don't have much sense, I understand that, but watching it, it seemed to me that Trump really wanted to do something, really is serious about finding some way to take some action. I don't know what that action would be.
Well, the solutions aren't simple, because really it's not simply a gun problem, it's a people problem. Yeah. I mean, I own guns. I've never shot anyone, and I wouldn't shoot. I mean, and it's so...
That's comforting.
When you face the reality,
I'm going to sit over here.
When you face the reality that, you know, it's like 85% of these shooters come from dysfunctional family situations. Yeah. So that's where we're creating a problem, and until we fix that, we won't really fix it.
And it might be beneficial if the FBI and other law enforcement agencies checked out the tips that were called into them.
Oh, absolutely.
Which, if in this case, might have prevented the Florida
That was
shootings.
Unforgivable that they didn't follow up on that. Just
they
absolutely
know
unforgivable.
They have 800,000 of those a year. I have to stand up for the FBI because no one else does right now. They're a great organization.
But they have tip lines for the very purpose of calling in and saying, here's someone who might be a problem.
And that one was very pointed and very serious. I think it deserves some follow-up.
Well, they owned up to it, though. That's the thing. They reached out and owned up to it.
But they do get a lot of calls like that. They follow every one of them. We couldn't afford the FBI. Because the man hours would take to do that.
Well, I think it's the multiple calls they had about this one individual.
This, I mean, it's apparent this person should have been alerted.
Yes, absolutely.
Jason, let me ask you this. If assault weapons, so-called assault weapons, like the one used in Florida, were eliminated from the United States, would that reduce the homicide rate in Kansas City?
I don't think it would hurt it, right? I mean, I think the assault weapon ban, I think in the 90s, I think studies show that violent crime went down like 5%.
No. They when they did away with the assault weapons, there was no change in the crime
Well,
rate.
I think there was a little. Maybe different studies will show there was probably 1 to 5%. Maybe that's not enough for people, but at least that's something. I don't think.
But crimes, the majority of the crimes involving shooting involve handguns, do they not?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, and you could also cite Chicago, which has one of the tightest gun restrictions in the country. And look at what's happening to crime there.
Yeah. And even if you found some way, and I would not support this, but if you outlawed weapons in general, with millions of them already existing and privately owned, someone who was really serious about committing a crime with a gun would find a way to do it.
Right. Exactly, and that's the problem.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try to find some way.
And then we have our southern border where, I mean, if you can get a human in here, you can bring a gun with you, too. I mean, it's just like you can't create a law that makes us safe. You're going to have to say, okay, the government's going to react to problems, but to say that we're going to control and stop the madness of people.
We need a multifaceted approach that does what's reasonable.
We need to fix people first.
Some people want a gun buyback program, but the problem with that is you sell your gun to the government, get the money, and go buy a better one.
There you go.
All right. Now we're going to head to the soapbox for Roast and Toast, where the Ruckettes have 30 seconds each to inculcate or extirpate people and events in the news. And we begin with Steve.
Well, I'm going to toast the Plaza 3 restaurant, which after 54 years is going out of the Plaza. There's a lovely lady whose name is Joe Lyons who greets you when you come in and has been there for 22 years. So if somebody's looking for somebody who's terrific at that, I'm sure she's available. And, you know, also whoever renovates and takes over that area should keep the line that is there that shows how high the flood got in 1977. It's almost 6 feet tall. They bring kids through to show them the flood that had occurred in Kansas City. I hope they'll at least hold that one wall.
Will you hire her as your private chef?
My private chef.
Oh, Ron?
Yeah.
I'd like to toast the Reverend Billy Graham, who passed away, and just more than a preacher. You know, they called him a pastor to presidents. You know, here was a guy who genuinely not only preached the gospel, but lived the gospel. And what an example he was. And just may the Lord bless him and keep him and make his face to shine upon him and give him peace.
99 years old at the time of his death, almost 100 years. Lisa?
The election meddling that was outlined in the recent Mueller indictments was only possible because of individuals who absorb everything in their Facebook feed like brain-dead lemmings. So my roast is for those who refuse to step outside their social media bubble and to question the legitimacy of posts and to compare various sources of information. Facebook is not a benevolent purveyor of truth. It's a money-making platform that's designed to addict people by showing them what they want to see. Smarten up, America.
And Jason.
Wanted to toast, speaking of which we had earlier about the White House segment they had yesterday with the families and whatnot. I think that's a great thing that we're starting to do. Politicians are actually confronting these issues afterwards instead of saying it's not the time to talk about this. Marco Rubio was at a CNN town hall last night. Obviously, he put himself out there. I think more politicians need to do this, and I think it's time that we come to find some solutions that we can agree upon and try to move the ball forward on gun violence.
All right, and finally, here is a toast to the Creating Relief and Useful Middle Class Benefits and Savings Bill, acronym CRUMS. If CRUMS becomes law, bonuses given by companies as a result of the president's tax cut plan will be tax-free. It is also designed to take a swipe at House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi, who scoffed at the $1,000 bonuses, calling them crumbs. And that is Ruckus for this week. Because it's membership and special programming time, we'll be off until March 22nd at 7. Now for this fine group of Ruckettes and the crew, Mike Shannon saying thanks for watching and good night.